without any further ado, we've got Austin Brown with us, Stacy Cope, Lauren, who is our resident DBA and is here to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly about actually managing a database and doing this kind of stuff on a day-to-day basis. So, we're not just the owners. We're also members and clients. I guess if you want to say hair club for men's style, we actually get in there and do this kind of stuff every day. So we are going to go ahead and get started and talking about again. TSG, many of you have come to our webinars and know what we do. We do a lot of fundraising consulting and manage large appeals for many organizations. We do fundraising consulting. A lot of what we have done and more recently have done is the database consulting, serving both in kind of a database audit capacity, as well as actually serving as the primary database administrator for some clients throughout the country. And then we've created some tools for ourselves and started to make that available to others as well. In fundraising automation, we call that Automate Genius. So just a shout out to some of our clients who are out there using these fancy tools, and you will get a chance a little bit later on to see a couple of them that do help manage the duplicates and kind of keeping your data clean. So without any further ado, why do duplicates happen? That's a great question, and I've asked the team here to kind of share a little bit about how duplicates get into the database, those pesky dupe records. So who wants to get us started?
I think the top one for me is event registration information in NXT doesn't flow through that data review tool right now. So their matching algorithm has the potential to add a lot of duplicates to your system.
We use a couple of third-party vendors or providers, not like random mailing lists that we purchase, but specifically people who have made a gift on a different platform or registered for an event on a different platform, and importing those. Sometimes the matching criteria doesn't catch them.
So like in that situation, Lauren, we're talking about, if you have a gala that you're maybe using like a Qtago or Eventbrite or Giftbutter or something like that, getting that data from that third-party tool back into Razor's Edge.
Correct.
You may accidentally, I don't think anybody's intentionally creating duplicate records, but kind of accidentally get some of that stuff in the database.
Sometimes it doesn't recognize something as simple as like ST to ST period or STREET. So it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Stacy, any?
The chat is going crazy with tributes, obviously annoying, right? And just nicknames in general. Sorry, everyone, about my voice. It's allergy season here. But yeah, somebody once makes a gift as Bob, then next time makes a gift as Robert, or then Robert's wife, whose name is Roberta, goes on and makes a gift, and then you have 3 records. So yeah, all those kinds of things. Then there's also the good old-fashioned somebody in your office wasn't paying attention and just created a new record for somebody instead of looking to see if they were already in the database.
Somebody moved and they didn't think to check their email address or their phone. They just saw that, oh, this is a different address. It's a new person.
Online gifts are a big one too, right? So my wife and I, support a lot of organizations, and I think in most of those organizations, we have kind of a shared household record. And so in some situations, if I'm the head of household, Karen goes on and makes a gift, it's going to generate a new record for her as opposed to saying, oh, she's the spouse of this other person, and so on and so forth. And now suddenly we have 2 records and 2 mailings, and we're upset at the organization because we're giving money and they're turning around and wasting it by sending us, an Andy and Kara record or an Andy and Kara solicitation and a Kara and Andy solicitation. The madness. So we're going to talk about those kinds of things, but in reality, duplicates are costing you money, and we'll kind of give you some reasons why, right? I obviously just mentioned the mailing piece of it, but more and more Blackbaud has brought to your attention, particularly in Razor's Edge, and we probably have some people on here who are not necessarily Razor's Edge users, but whether you're using Bloomerang or Virtuous or even something like that, many of those organizations are basing your contract on the number of records that you're utilizing. So if you have garbage records in there, you're paying rent for records that really don't need to be in there. And so it is, wise and to be a good steward of those philanthropic resources to go in and clean things up periodically. And so that's what we're hoping to tackle a little bit today. So again, it just happens. There's no way to really avoid it. It just happens. And so really what we want to spend some time talking to you about today is how to put things in place to help avoid it, or if you know that they're going to be in there, things to kind of address to clean them up in an expedited fashion. So without any further ado, let's fire away. Austin, I think you're up first.
Yeah, so the best course of action for all the folks doing manual data entry or bringing files in is to search for existing records first, right? To me, this is logical, the first thing, right? You're going to check for name, address, phone number, any contact information included. And you're going to put a best effort forward, not just you, but everyone on your team as well, to see if that constituent already exists in your database.
One of the things you can do is put together a how-to, a template. This is how we check for things. This is how things might go. Document it, put it down, but make it an editable document. For example, this is one we put out and are sharing with clients. You know, this is one that you can do. We're not currently sharing it because it hasn't been updated. There's so much that's changing so fast with NXT and the way they're upgrading and moving things around from the total web solution to the unified view to all the things that we want to make sure that we're putting out accurate data. So make it something, it's a living, breathing document, as all your policies and procedures probably should be.
SharePoint doc, Google Doc, things that, you know, multiple people on the team can get in there and look at. And again, revise, edit as necessary. We were going through this and it was kind of like, do we put this up there? Do we not put this up there? I said, well, we are human too, people. So, you know, we occasionally need to get in there and clean up our own stuff and edit our own stuff. So it remains one of the things that we hope to be able to do as we do clean it up, and particularly as we put more emphasis on cleaning up duplicates inside of NXT. People have appreciated some of the resource pages that we put out before, the terminology and kind of the translation between database view and web view. I talked to the team this morning, and we will likely be able to at some point release our PSG kind of duplicate management recommendation. So once we update this document, we will try to share that out as a resource for people that come to future webinars. So stay tuned for that.
This is one of my favorite recommendations, is when you're merging records, take the constituent ID off of the record you're emptying, right? You're moving everything off of, and save it as an alias on the record you're keeping. And this helps you down the road, and it helps your staff down the road, that when someone searches for that constituent that might not exist anymore because they were a dupe that you cleaned up, they're able to find the right record, and you can also query on it to see what records have had something merged into them.
You bet. And this is a common one. And when we actually do some database cleanup projects for clients, and we always utilize this as an option, because inevitably you've got, you know, mailings that have been out there for a year or 2 years that have a constituent ID on it, that again, if you're getting rid of that constituent ID when the gift comes in, it makes it really hard for the gift processing staff to do something with it because they're looking at the ID that no longer exists in the system. So using that as an alias will allow that to populate in the search function, and then they can add it to the now target record. And we'll talk about source versus target here in a minute. But again, just a thing, as you are merging records, it does kind of leave you some breadcrumbs to tie it back to the old record.
Yeah. When in doubt, leave it out, is what Andy said. If you don't know,
Got it.
Don't do it, because I think we're living in a time, and particularly where I am north of Houston in Texas, and we have I live in a multi-generational household. And down here in the South, we have lots of juniors and seniors and trays, and maybe they use a suffix and maybe they don't. So if you cannot verify that Bob Smith is the same Robert Smith at the same address, or they have two legit looking email addresses and one isn't like quarterback hunk at Hotmail, I would definitely not burn them until you can talk to that donor.
Excellent. And again, just a reminder, if you have questions, be sure and pop them in the Q&A. I'm starting to see some of them, so we will absolutely address those. Before we get into the next thing here, I am going to launch a poll. I'm going to try to, again, I don't normally do this. This is normally Nick's jam. And so I'm going to launch a poll. We're just trying to get a sense right now of how people are currently managing duplicates. So in Razor's Edge, are you managing them in WebView? Are you managing them in Database View? Maybe you're not managing duplicates at all. And if that's the case, that's okay. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. So totally okay there. Oh, I guess I should have used both. So as an option, but that's good. Both are still currently options. We know that at some point that will not be the case. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and kind of share results. So it looks like the majority of people are still using, the tried and true database view. We've got some using WebView, and again, as some mentioned, likely using kind of a combination of both. And for those couple people, boy, do we have something in store for you. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Stacy Cope. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and allow Stacy to do a little bit of a demo here on managing duplicates inside of NXT, the web view.
Hey, everybody. So I'm excited to show you this. Please remember to put your questions in Q&A and we'll try to get to them at the end. I am here to tell you that I think managing duplicates in WebView is way better than the old database view way. So I'm hoping to give you some things today that you're going to like. Also, before we move on from that, I want to point out our cool free bulletin board tile from RedArc. We love them. They're so cool. This is a free tool that they have out there. Go add it to your homepage. You can put whatever you want here to leave notes for your staff and stuff. So please check that out if you haven't already. Okay, so in database view, the duplicate management tool is buried back in the admin config area, and that is not where it is in WebView. So like when I first went to look for this, it took me a really long time to find it, embarrassingly, but it's right up here. It's in constituents and duplicate management, and the same people have access to it as they do based on the permissions you've given them. So don't worry about that. It'll only show up here for people that have permissions, but it's right here, constituents, duplicate management, which I think makes plenty of sense. I really like the new navigation. I think they're doing a lot of good things there. All right, so when we get to the page, we see that my database has 81 possible duplicates. We have this list of them. It's a really great list. I like this. We can see their kind of primary information here. There's a column for match likelihood. Razor's Edge has decided how closely the two records match each other. And then there's a column for matched on. So the little guy icon is the name, the envelope is the email, and there's a house for mailing address, and there's a phone, an old style analog phone for if a phone matches. So that's cool. And my favorite part of this, well, one of my favorite parts of this is this cool filter thing here. So we can choose what we want to include and not include. If I want to only see my most likely matches, I would click here. If I want to see any possible match, I would click here for these ones that they probably matched on name and that's it or something, right? The matched on row is an or search. So if I have, say, just email in there, it's going to only show me people over here who have an email icon. So if I add address, it's going to be showing me people who matched either on email or address. So this is not an and, it's an or. For the purposes of today, I'm going to put all those in and I'm going to look for my most likely ones. Because say I have 5 minutes before my next meeting starts, I have time to merge one record. Let's make it an easy one that I don't have to think too much about. So let's look at it, right? So here's what happens. I only have one record that's high likelihood. There's a little menu here, so we'll click on that. I have options here, so I can either compare the records or I can mark these as not duplicates, and that will remove them from this list forever. The other cool thing about this is that you don't actually have to click into that menu at all. If you know you want to compare the records, you can just click on one of these names and it'll open up the compare screen for you. My next favorite part about the new duplicate management tool is that we can see the entire record here. So in the database view version, there's a limited amount of information that it shows up for you. And if you want to see everything, you have to click into the record. So this shows you absolutely everything. It has all of the tiles. It has all of the things, right? And I can scroll down my records side by side and look at them and compare them. I love this. I think it's really, really slick. So again, if in doubt, do not merge. It's really hard to take records apart if you've merged them. So in this particular case, we have an email address and it matches, and there's nothing else on this record that would lead me to believe this might be a different person, and there's really not much on this record anyway, so risk here is low. So we're definitely going to merge these two records, right? But you have to use a judgment call. You just got to get in there and look at things and decide if you're confident that they are the same person, squish them together. If you're not, either ignore them or mark them as not duplicates. So we have that button here again. So if I look at these and decide, oh no, this is actually the father and this is the son, or these people are not related at all, or whatever it is, I can mark these as not duplicates and they disappear from my list forever. Or I can select data to merge. So always, always, always keep your eye on this little guy up here, this source record, target record icon. This shows us what's happening in the merge. So this is telling us that we're taking information from this side and we're going to put it over here. So everything's going to come from this record and end up on top of this record. Okay. Now, if I'm looking at these and I've decided, oh no, I want to keep this one over here on the left, you can switch them. And they do not move the records, but it switches which is the source and which is the target. So you got to keep an eye on this blue thing, which way your arrow's going. And that's telling you which record you're going to keep. So source record is the old stuff that you're going to move on to a different record. Target record is the one you're going to keep. So I wanted to keep it this way. This one has more information. We're just going to throw everything from here into this one. Some other options we have here: exclude soft credits when merging gifts. This is useful for merging spouses. It's probably not something we need to worry about here. And then the delete source record button, which I am a big fan of, but a lot of people are not. Only use this when you are very, very confident in what is going on in your merges and in your data. I would recommend merging several hundred constituents by hand and reviewing them before you get too trigger happy with the delete source record button. But if you do that, when we merge it, when I click this merge records button, it'll take everything it can from this record and put it over here, and then it will delete this. Now, as you'll see, there's going to be some stuff left on this record. So that's why I'm not going to do that, because I want to show you how it works. So this is my official favorite part of the new merge tool. So in the database view one, you have to select the things that the record pieces that you want to move, and you have to move them over in that little box for every single record that you merge. And here they're all checked by default. So if you know, maybe I don't want to merge the notes, or I don't want to merge the solicit codes or something, you can uncheck those things, but otherwise they're all checked by default, which is probably what I think most people would do on most cases. So we're going to go with that, and I am going to click merge records. Lauren and Austin and Andy, please stop me if I miss anything, or if somebody has a burning question in the chat. But okay, so now you can see I have 0 possible duplicates at with these filters. So they've disappeared from my list. And if I go to this tab, merged duplicates, I can see that here's my pair that I just merged. So here's Liborio source record, here's the target record. The status is that the merge is complete. That was quick. It merged today, and there's a column for errors, which I've actually not seen, so I don't know what those might be, but if there was an error and it couldn't merge the records, that would show here. So one thing that I like about this is that you can still see both records here. So I click on it and it takes me to something that looks sort of like the compare screen, but not quite. And what I would use this screen for is to review this source record to make sure there's nothing left on it that I need. So key things that you might be worried about: event registrations will not allow you to put 2 of the same event on a person. So if for some reason both of these people had an event participant record, that would not be merged. Attributes that are only 1 per record, if they both have it, it's not going to be merged. Other things that you want to check for: GIFs. I would never, ever, 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 ever in a million years delete a record with GIFs on it. So please don't do that. So I even though I told it to merge the gifts and there's no reason that it wouldn't have, I always check the gifts to make sure that the gifts are gone. So I will scroll down this tab. This email address is still here, but it's also here. No gifts. So these tabs now, the tiles now work like our red check boxes do, or our red check marks in database view. So this now has this little blue number for giving history 0. And same thing with events. Like if I collapse these, it tells me I have no giving history, no events, no attachments. So those are 3 big things that I want to make sure are still there. Now on this record, I do have a custom field that didn't merge. So let's go check what happened there. And if we get down to his custom fields, we see that he already has that custom field, which is marked as 1 per record. And this record hadn't received it, that record had, so I'm not concerned about that. Nobody cares, whatever. But in some cases you might say, oh, I need to change this to no, or whatever it is, right? And then once you're confident that there is nothing you need on this record, then get rid of it, get it out of there. You are paying per record, just say goodbye, it's over. We don't need it anymore. It doesn't have anything we need, just delete it. So you can do that here. Yay, which we also couldn't do at the beginning of WebView duplicate management, but now you can delete this from right here, which is a great little plugin. Also, but I'm not going to do that right now because I want to show you another trick. So we can also, I'm still on this merge duplicates tab, and we can use this button to create a list of source records. And if we do that, it'll just open up the list page for me, and it'll make me a constituent list. And it says starting from duplicate management, merge, job, source, constituent. So it has all the people that I need to delete here. And then I can save this as a static query in the database. And then I can go to database view and do a global delete. So if you're doing a lot of these, that's how I would recommend doing that. If you're doing one at a time, go ahead and delete them back in that other view. But if there's a lot of them, I think it makes sense to just delete them in a batch. Okay, things that are still weird that I want to be sure and talk about. So media was one of the big reasons that we were originally told to merge in both WebView and database view before deleting a record. So media now comes over into WebView. So if you have something on your media tab in database view, it will appear in WebView. And if you merge those records, it will continue to appear in WebView. If you merge those records, if you do not merge those records in database view, the media will be gone on the new record. So you'll be able to see it in WebView. It will not disappear forever, but you won't be able to see it in database view. So that's what happens to media now. So I think we can get away with that. I would recommend just go ahead and do your merges in WebView now, because that will keep your email history and your tags and your other kind of WebView specific stuff. And I think having the media appear in WebView is perfectly fine. But again, that's going to be an org by org kind of decision, right? You make that decision based on what works for you. So if it's important to you to see the media in database view, you're going to have to do that merge in database view as well as the merge in WebView. And then the annoying thing about that is that the media will probably show up. You might get 2 copies of the media in WebView when you open the record in WebView. So you'll have to test it out, play with it, experiment, do some, and then wait a couple of hours and look at it again and make sure it's looking like you want it to, right? Because things take a while to refresh. So, so please test that, and please be careful about merging records with media. But other than that, I think that for the most part, we're safe to go ahead and just do your merges in WebView and stop doing merges in database view. My humble opinion. Andy, Lauren, Austin, have I missed anything?
There's a flurry of stuff in the chat about, does this move, does that move, does this move? And I will tell you that I do know that Blackbot is actively working on this process. And so there are some things that continue to change. That media stuff was not even a conversation point that we could have 3 months ago,
Right.
I would say. And I have noticed as of late that email addresses that are the same type and the same text are not duplicating. So if one has it and if both have it, you don't end up with 2. That was not the case several months ago. So I would love to be able to say this happens, this doesn't, But I can say right now, what I notice is some solicit codes aren't duplicated. Exact text, same type, same primary, emails, phones aren't duplicated. So you do want to just keep checking on things, like keep testing them. It's for better and for worse. It is both maddening and helpful that it's a evolving process.
Yeah.
One of the things we get asked a lot, and I mean, again, we do some of this cleanup, right? Where people are like, it's too big of a mess, like we're not touching it. Can you get in there and do that? And we do. But some people are looking at Stacy's, screen there in our sandbox database and seeing 80 duplicates and losing their mind because they're like, my God, 80 duplicates. And then other people are like, man, I wish I had 80 duplicates, or I wish I had 800 duplicates. So it really varies from organization to organization. We've seen smaller databases, we've seen larger databases. I think in general, kind of the rule of thumb, or even if you're looking at the kind of the database health and you're trying to get a higher score, kind of see where your peers at, 2.5 to 4% of duplicate records in your database is probably an average number, kind of an allowable number, or one where we would say like, hey, like you're in line, like this is nothing crazy. We are working with an organization right now that has about 600,000 records in their database, and they have over 30,000 identified duplicate records. So it's going to be a project. It's been a long time, about a decade since they've even addressed any of those duplicates. So just kind of take that into context and be aware as you're kind of doing a self-assessment for your organization. Some people have processes and procedures in place to do duplicates, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever. Some organizations have processes in place that say, when I have nothing else to do, I'm going to get to duplicates. And I will tell you, we've all been there. There are always things to do. So if duplicates are very low on your priority list, eventually they do kind of snowball and pick up, and 10 turns into 100, turns into 1,000 really quite quickly if you're not addressing it. And so just try to create some sort of discipline around how frequently are you checking that, and how many people are checking that. That's another question that we often get asked, is like, is this a situation where like we're tasking everybody in the office with creating, or kind of taking care of duplicates? And we had an organization that we work with that turned it into like a summer competition. They did all summer long. They were like, we've got thousands and thousands of duplicates, and they actually turned it into a contest and created rewards for people based on like how many duplicates they could, kind of merge and get through, and did something similar with deceased records. But there was a process and procedures manual, as Lauren kind of alluded to before, so that everybody was attacking records the same way, making sure that they were clicking the appropriate things, merging the right data over. It wasn't, 8 people doing things 8 different ways. There was consistency in that. And so for some organizations, it's a lot of people do it, but there's, a way to do it. And in other situations, they've got the grim reaper of the office that's going in there and deceasing records and killing data and stuff like that, where it's just one person that's kind of responsible for all that. So both ways work. The biggest thing is consistency amongst all in that situation. So again, we've got lots of questions and we're going to get to them. One of the things we do want to do is kind of take advantage of opportunities. So we have, again, addressed, duplicate records for a lot of clients, and we talk a lot about Automate Genius and how it works. Many of the Automate Genius tools that we use are things that we created for ourselves to tackle these very situations. And so just want to kind of go through a couple of them with you today. I think there's going to be maybe some variations on things that we've used in the past, but specifically kind of how we're tackling some of the automations and addressing dupes. And then we'll get into Q&A. So again, if you have questions and answer, or if you have the questions, please put them in the Q&A section. We're going to try to pick some of those out of the chat that made their way into that, just so that we can try to address those too. But just a few more slides here on some of the cool things that we can do with Automate Genius. And again, in many of these situations, the automations that we do are going to run overnight, so that we're looking at the data as a whole and not in the middle of the day, where people could be in a record that could theoretically, kind of be caught in the middle and create a duplicate or not create a duplicate. Generally, the automations are triggered by something. We try to, as best we can, serve them up to you either through a button or tile, which we're going to show you, or by giving you an email to say, hey, look here, we found something, and click on this and do this, sort of thing. So the idea with automation is it is a more push the information to you as opposed to you having to proactively get in there, click on the duplicate management tool and pull the data out. We're trying to serve it up to you in those ways. So looking at importing data from outside sources, again, we talked about this earlier on. This is probably the biggest area where duplicates can be created when you're doing, you're bringing in information from third-party services, either through events or, you're doing, if you purchase a list, and some organizations go out there and they do acquisition mailings and try to purchase lists, and you're putting things in there. Certainly ways to do that. And so we're going to talk about the magic folder. And I think, Austin, are you going to tackle this one?
So at the magic folder is exactly as it sounds. You drop a CSV into a SharePoint folder and the automation kicks off and does all the busy work for you. So it searches by a number of data categories to try to match the records in that CSV against records in your database. And it gives you 3 output files. And you can use these for further review. You could put a likelihood score in them of how likely you think that single match or multiple match is. And you could even set these up as import files, right? So the automation goes through, matches up all your constituents for you, and then matches that data together, right, into one file that you could immediately turn around and plug into the import tool and get it immediately into your system.
And so what we're looking at here, Austin, like in that single match situation where we're pretty sure that the information you're bringing in already exists in Razor's Edge, what it's going to do is on that new data that you're bringing in, give you the ability to essentially merge that RE constituent ID record or the import ID record into that new data so that when you import it into the system, it is, directing it or mapping it to that exact record, correct?
Yeah, yes. So it just does all the busy mindless work for you so you can turn your attention to things that really need your brain.
Mm-hmm. And obviously for the no match situation, because we're looking in there, we're not able to find any identifiable information that already exists. Fairly confidently, we can say that that would be a new record. So that is one that you can safely import, without any concern of generating a duplicate record. The multiple matches, there are scenarios in there where it is going to take a set of eyeballs to kind of determine, is it the right Andy Schrader or not, Andy or Andrew, junior, senior, those kinds of things. So, but it does kind of break it down into 3 little silos for you to tackle and then ultimately make decisions from there. So another one using the Sky API. This is something that you created, Stacy. Do you want to talk about your exciting stuff here?
So this is kind of similar to the magic folder in that it takes data from some third-party source and then it looks it up for you, but instead of giving it to you in a CSV, it just puts this tile in Razor's Edge that's kind of interactive, and you can say, okay, I know which one this is. We found 3 possible matches. It's probably this one, and you can select one and match them, and then we can have those systems talk to each other so that they're, it's marked in your third-party software as who matches up to who. So it's just a little bit more of an interactive, kind of cute way to do that same kind of thing. Have a machine do all the typing to look up people by address and name and email, so you don't have to sit there and type for days and days and days and days and days.
Did we choose Pringer Solutions Group over Pringle Solutions Group because it was already like trademarked or copyrighted or something like that?
Probably.
Awesome. And by the way, Stacy, after this webinar, is going to email David Pringer is the bomb and see if that's a deliverable address or not. So we did chat about that. Also, for those of you who have attended our webinars in the past, the city of Austin reached out and told us to please spell their name correctly. So we spelled it Austin as opposed to En, which is, kind of the preferred spelling here at PSG. So exciting stuff. So just a couple more things we want to get into. So for many of you, we talk about the Daily Digest, and myself as kind of a frontline fundraiser for a lot of my time, the Daily Digest would be an awesome tool to know if somebody in my portfolio made a gift and I need to reach out and do something like that. for the back office, the database, people, the DBAs and things, we can actually create a daily digest in which we identify potential duplicates. So as new records are created, where we say, hey, this is a duplicate record, we've actually had scenarios where we can say, hey, a new record was created, and this is a field that you typically put on every record, but for some reason or another, the record was created and somebody didn't add this field, like it needs to be added, click here. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Stacy?
Yeah, so this is such a cool one. It just looks up everybody that was added to your system yesterday and searches for them, right? By the same things that you would do if you were checking. So it checks for name, address, email, and then if it thinks it might have found a match, it sends you this email. So this actually is if you're into Power Automate, you can do this yourself. This is in the Blackbaud template library because Austin and I did this for a BB Day skills lab a couple years ago. So you can have this one yourself today if you are into that, or we can set it up for you. But it's just really useful, right? So then you know which are the most current, the most recent, the most needing attention of your duplicates, rather than going into the back of Razor's Edge and finding all of those things in the search. These ones give you the ones that you need to pay attention to today, right now.
I have this one set up, and I actually filter the emails because we use Outlook. I filter the emails into a duplicates box, and I check that every time I upload a list for to send acknowledgments, because I want to make sure. So correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy. I think mine is triggered when a record is saved and closed if it's been changed.
It might be.
So if a new gift is added and it triggers the whatever Stacy's done, it triggers something. So I might actually see two records, neither of them being new records, but because there was new information added, like a gift or an email or something, it says, hey, look, I also found this other person this record hasn't been touched since 2018. Go and look and make sure that it does this. And although I try and stay on top of my duplicates, this helps me prioritize them, because now I know I need to get to this before my usual Friday afternoon run, because we're going to send acknowledgement letters in the mail tomorrow. So I need to step it up and get these 4 done because they just came in. So again, it does some of the work for me. I'm doing the actual merging, as you would be in all of the others, but this helps me prioritize my list without having to panic and go, oh gosh, I have 400 who are 3 dots.
Yep.
I can't do all those for tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, and there's a couple things, right? So there are a lot of people that spend a lot of time and effort and energy on cleaning up their database, right? And we applaud you for that. But this tool is a way to really help you keep it clean. So once you put in kind of the initial work, you're really kind of trying to put in, some guardrails around getting it dirty again. So, there's an opportunity here. And in this particular situation, to your point, Lauren, we have a lot of clients that we work with that do variable kind of acknowledgement letters or thank you, where they're actually pointing out, thank you so much for your first time gift. How embarrassing would it be to be an organization thanking somebody for their first time gift, when in reality they've maybe been giving to the organization for 10 years, but because you're acknowledging that as a new record is actually a duplicate record that you haven't kind of addressed, it could actually do more harm than good to the donor in that particular situation. So just kind of wanted to be able to point that out as well. I think that's it for kind of our show and tell. We're going to get into some of the Q&A here, and we have a lot to go with. Yes, Lauren or Stacy, do you have something to add?
I have a couple of things.
Okay.
One thing that I should have showed you in here is if you already know what the records are that you want to merge, you can just click that button that I showed you up at the top of this page, select records to merge, and then you search for them here. It's for your source record that you want to get rid of and your target record that you want to do. So that's there. There's a lot of questions about things getting duplicated on the target record. So I think that I don't remember all the exact rules about this. Again, you need to test it in your system. And like we keep saying, they're changing things all the time. So I'm not sure if, like, say, if this one had an alumni constituent code, if you would end up with 2 alumni constituent codes. I don't remember exactly what's happening there, but I think most
Currently you don't, at least not in my data.
Okay, and but you always do want to things like you always want to check the target record also. I didn't do that in my demo, which I should have, but you want to check for things like if this one had been marked no valid address and inactive before the merge, those things would now show up here too. So you need to keep an eye on, you know, anything from this record that you didn't want to show up over here, coming up over here. So I just wanted to say those couple of things.
And some of that also continues to evolve because in some of those cases, target record, I want to say is the defining one. So it's not going to move because we assume the source one is least accurate, right? It's going to say, oh, this record was this was the primary address because maybe you found one that's the same person, but they have two different addresses. The preferred address, or in WebView, the starred address, is going to take precedent because it's the target. So the target versus source is going to be a stick-on point. I know there are a couple questions about that.
Right on. All right, let's try to get into some of these questions. And again, we encourage you to keep your questions coming. We have 18 minutes to try to get through as many of these as we possibly can. So first question I'm going to toss to you, Austin. Dawn wanted to know, what is the difference between alias and recognition name, as we talked about, you know, kind of where to record that alias information for the merge record?
So I suspect the recognition name might be a unique field in your database, maybe an additional salutation. And so I would not being able to talk to you directly and ask a clarifying question. I would assume that the recognition name is an addressee salutation, and the alias is really sort of a hidden part of the constituent record. When you're looking in database view, it's a little bit more upfront in WebView on the constituent summary tile, but it's really a place for you to store information that will aid in searching. So that might be, I am married. It might have my maiden name in there, right? It might have, you know, someone mentioned employee numbers. It might have student IDs. It might have merged record IDs, right? It's whatever is going to help you find that record when you're utilizing the search tool. So the cool part is you can type in an alias into this bar. You can also do it in the advanced search window in database view on the last name field, and it will find anything that's listed within someone's alias on a record.
That's why to put it in an alias instead of an attribute, because it searches for it right here.
It also works very nicely in Power Automate if you're an automator to store those sort of unique numbers and IDs in the alias field.
Right. Next question, which is a great one, and man, we just love Blackbot. So Marissa wants to know why it shows one number of identified duplicates inside of WebView and a different number inside of database view. This is kind of an ongoing feud, but in database view, right, the tool will list each individual record as a separate line item. So essentially, it's counting the theoretical duplicates as two individual records, right? Line one, line two. When Stacy showed you inside of WebView, you know, it's the duplicate records. It's looking at one line that might have had then, you know, kind of the source and the target record. So that is part of the reason. There are also different algorithms, I understand, right? In terms of how the data is being identified as a potential duplicate. It's not the same mechanism that's being used inside of database view as it is inside of WebView. And I do know, you know, some of the NXT holdouts have said, hey, we're not processing GIFs on NXT because they didn't like the matching, you know, kind of the tool, the algorithm as much, and felt that it allowed for a few more duplicates in there. I think Blackbot has since kind of tightened some of that up to make it, you know, really more in line with the folks that are still processing in Online Express, you know, through BBMS that way. But other things to add there, gang?
No, I think you covered it well. The difference for the primary difference is it's considering different things in the algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think someone put it in the chat, maybe it was Sunshine, who mentioned that they go and look in database view to see what's there, but then they merge in WebView.
Right on. Okay, next question. Is there a way to consolidate alias entries? My organization has internal employee numbers we enter as an alias. A few hundred of them have their employee number entered twice, one with leading zeros and one without.
Alias cleanup can be a little bit difficult in Razor's Edge at face value. There is a tool through Zedman Development that can help you clean up your aliases. It's also really, really easy through Power Automate and the API. So if you're into automation, you could set up a flow that compares aliases on a single record and deletes the one that you don't want, right? So if you don't want the one with the leading zeros, then you can program it to tell it to get rid of the one with the leading.
Essentially, you would code in the business rules where if the alias contains leading
And then it
zeros,
would just run against
would-
your system and do all your cleanup.
Yep. Right on. Okay, I knew this question was coming, Margot. Can we talk? Oh, shoot. Can we talk through how to divide a record back out into two if we merge them accidentally? In other words, is there an undo button? Is there like the reverse arrow situation?
That's
There's
me, Margot. Good luck.
Your options are guess and try to split the things up, or do a full system restore, which is a big, big deal, and you don't want to do it. So, no, there's not.
Yeah, my advice is if you're not sure, do not proceed. Like if you are not 100% sure that these two people are the same person, don't do it.
Next question was Caitlin, which I think we addressed this. So is there a way to keep a list of what was merged? Obviously, Stacy was able to kind of show you if you're doing those merges inside of WebView, there is now kind of that list that you can look at, the constituent list of what was merged, and then ultimately, after you've checked and double checked and triple verified all the things, if you ultimately then choose to delete those now inactive records because they were kind of part of the merge process, there is a way to get those records out of there in more of a global fashion than just like onesie twosie, like one by one throughout that. Stacy, do you have anything to add there?
If you add that constituent ID as an alias, then you'll have that to filter on. You can do a query that says, show me anybody with this alias type. And there are some other tools. You could also put a note or an attribute or something so that you can add it up, but those you would have to do those all manually. So, and I mean, there are some third-party tools that help with this stuff, like Merge-O-Matic, I think somebody mentioned, puts all the changed information into a note, which is pretty cool. But that is not a built-in feature of Razor's Edge. If you want that, you have to either pay for it or do it by hand.
Right on. What is the best practice for choosing which record should be the source record? Great question.
I think that depends.
We could probably give you at least two different answers
Yeah.
amongst the team here, but I think I will defer to the experts here.
I'm gonna say part of that is going to depend on your organization and your policies and procedures. Do you have something that wants to show how long a record has been in your database? Because that could be one thing. I like to use the one I consider most current because for most of the orgs I support, they don't care how long the record has been in the database, particularly those who change it over in the last 10 years because they all have been there in the last 10 years. Or were all created in the last 10 years. I use the one typically with the most events or gifts because then there's less to move over and less I need to double check. Attributes or custom fields are another weight for me because then that's less I have to check around. If I only need to check 2 custom fields in the source record, I go through that. Or constituent codes because I did just run a recent check and I don't have a ton of records that I need to merge that have the same constituent codes. So if they were both alumni, those kinds of records are clean. I'm running into more, this person's an alumnus, this person's a parent. And so I do want both to come over, but if you have data like that where you know that the same person is likely not multiple alumni in some higher ed, that is definitely a possibility depending on how you track it. So the answer is sort of.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Lauren. All right. When testing the duplicate management, I noticed event registrations did duplicate. Is that not supposed to duplicate?
That's not behavior that I'm used to, just because there's a restriction in WebView that if a constituent already has a participant record on a specific event, they can't have a second one. So I would be curious if the event registrations are to two different events. If that makes sense.
Okay. Let's see. Our friend Maya wrote here. Regarding the media. I'm pretty sure if you have a URL in media in database view, it doesn't come over to web view. That means any database view media would not come over to web view correctly. And or correct. She's asking if that is correct. So I know that in the past that was a challenge, right? That the database view media did not merge over.
When I tested it this week, I tested it with a PDF and a JPEG, and they both merged from I put them in database view, and then it appeared in web view on that record, and then I merged it over to the new record, and it brought both of those over. So I didn't test with the URL, so I can't swear to that. I would definitely play around with it.
Right on. All right. Next question. Again, we're going to try to get through as many as we can here. If you default to selecting all items in the merge, how do you handle fields that get duplicated, like constituent codes or addresses? I feel like it's duplicating those things. So you're merging, from the source record to the target record, and is it, adding then multiple constituent codes? How do you handle that? And so, I mean, likely a maintenance query after the fact, could be the case, or some, just kind of data cleanup after the data cleanup, right?
I just spot check it. So like after the merge, I just go and look for those sort of problem areas in your database or patterns that you've seen happen. And maybe that's something that you just go edit immediately on the target record and just clean it up a little bit.
All right, let's see. I'm trying to just knowing that we're going to be close on time here. Do prospect ratings still get duplicated during the merge? So,
I don't know that.
yes,
I don't
no?
know.
I'm not sure. I haven't checked them.
Great
I
question.
test it.
Kaylee, you
Sorry,
stumped the geniuses here. So we'll have to check it out and report back, or if you do it, please drop us a line and let us know. Let's see. Can Automate Genius provide auditing with other types of audits other than duplicates, or is there specific software? Yes. So we can absolutely do audits for more than just duplicates. There's lots of different things. I'll throw up a slide here at the end, Monica. You can scan it and it'll have access to my calendar. Would love to talk to you more about, all the nerd stuff that we like to talk about and ways to keep databases clean. So happy to help in that situation. How long does it take for duplicates to show up in NXT after a duplicate is created?
I would
I
say
don't know that.
anywhere from 4 hours to overnight,
Yeah.
depending on how fast your data cycles. It's the same answer as like reports and dashboards updating. All of my clients are a little bit different.
Mm-hmm. Question here. Do we recommend saving the record that is older or newer, or based it off of, which data? And we kind of addressed this. When I have worked with records in the past, if one record had a gift on it and the other one didn't, I would generally use the record that had a gift on it as kind of like my target record and try to bring everything into there. Or if it was a situation where like one record had address, phone number, email, and the other one had like next to no information, I would just kind of use the one that was, more updated, so if it had an email, if it had, some of those communication preferences, contact information, generally, that's what I do. But I think the biggest thing, we talked about this, consistency. So if you have a procedure where if you have two records, one of them has a gift and one of them doesn't, and you default to whatever record has the gift is, the record. Or to your point, Lauren, if it's the one that was the date added was, earlier than the other one, if you want that's me. Or if you want the newer one to be the one that you save because you perceive that that newer record has the more updated information and, you know, kind of move everything from the old record into the new record. It's more about documenting and trying to make that consistent. So, all right, we got another minute or two here. Is there a way to set the potential duplicate notification to work retroactively? Stacey, you're typing an answer, but I'm going to let you
I
talk
was.
to everybody.
No, I'll just tell you. Sort of. So we can't just run it on your entire database because it would take too long because Power Automate is not that fast. And it can't do that. It can't handle that many records at once. So not really, but if you had a group of records that you know were all added on X day and you wanted to check them, we could do a query and, you know, look up all of those things. So yeah, we could do something to look at old records.
Right on. Austin, I think there's a question here for you, or that you want an answer. If you clean up all the duplicates that are identified in NXT, why are there duplicates still showing up inside of database view?
You need to make sure that you're deleting the empty source record. So once you get all the information moved over, delete it out so it doesn't identify as a duplicate anymore. And the other piece is it goes back to the original answer of why are database view and web view duplicate managements different, and it's because they're running on different algorithms.
All right. We tried to answer as many questions. For those of you that we were not able to get to your questions, we will do our best to kind of follow up with you after the fact and kind of reach out. We do get a report after this on Zoom of all the questions that we answered and didn't answer and those kinds of things. So we will try our best. I'm going to share for those of you that are interested in learning a little bit more about Automate Genius. You can schedule a time to talk to myself or Andrew Menke, who sometimes joins us on these calls as well. Happy to do that. Webinar for next month. We will obviously include in the email tomorrow to kind of promote it, but you asked and we listened, and we will try to tackle reporting from all kinds of aspects of Crystal reports that sadly are probably, you know, in its last legs of life here as the migration continues to happen from database view to NXT. So really how to kind of tackle some of those custom Crystal reports and recreate those inside of Razor's Edge, looking at dashboards, looking at Insight Designer. We actually had a team meeting earlier today to start looking at dashlets, and that there might be some kind of fun reporting functionality that is relatively new and kind of how to use that to compare, you know, year over year, kind of year to date sorts of stuff. So if you are interested in reporting, know little about it, but get asked to do things that you cannot create, we certainly want you to come and join us next month for our reporting webinar. We'll have, I think, a couple new faces even joining us from the team to help us facilitate a wild discussion and presentation next month. So thank everybody so much. Appreciate you all hanging out with us, and we will see you next time. Thank you.